So, anyone notice that these psychedelic ads are looking very similar, very familiar to pharmaceutical ads? Here's one for some company. Look at these moms dancing around high on ketamine. Their kids are drowning in the pool, but they're painting and high on ketamine and laughing and playing. It's like bring joy back to your life. Make lasting mental health improvements by getting high on ketamine at home. Like what? Yeah, you know, it's eerily familiar to big pharma ads. I think I remember like the first one was Zoloft, the cloud. It's like a cloudy day. Actually, Shane Gillis on Saturday Night Live just had a pretty good sketch. Um, it was like very typical Shane Gillis. It's like, oh, I drink a lot of beers. Okay, cool. But his sketch was pretty funny. It was like, mimicking the prescription pharmaceutical advertisement. Like, talk to your doctor about a couple of beers. If I'm feeling sad, I just have a couple of beers. I mean, it's the same thing here. It's just they're rebranding it to be like, well, this is the healthier option, you know. I just can't help but look at this and laugh. Look at these moms dancing around high on ketamine, you know, eschewing all. Don't worry, life is better now because of ketamine. And look, I love ketamine. I'm a fan of ketamine. What I'm critiquing here is that we keep trying to change the interior of the house when the foundation is built on rotten, broken down, decrepit, deteriorating materials. You can, you know, you could say that this is no, this is different, but I think most of the people that are championing the medical model for psychedelic therapy and healing. And by the way, ketamine is not even a classic psychedelic, although I've had very psychedelic experiences with high doses of ketamine. Most of the people that are unwilling to critically examine this, they've got businesses. They continuously are putting more and more of their vision into a narrow, confined, limited space because they don't want to. They either say, well, hey, this is better than the prescription drugs. This has less side effects than the prescription drugs. It's better, and it's not just taking ketamine. There's therapy involved, so people get to work out their trauma and stuff, right? I'm not a fan of this like game of inches. Uh, I just can't help but look at this and laugh a little bit and just say like, yeah, this is just big pharma 2.0. That's just what it is. And it's so childish of humans to just be like, "Oh, yeah, this is the new thing. Yeah, let's invest everything in this and promote this and make this the new thing and work tirelessly." And the more that, it's like sunken cost fallacy. The more and more that you invest your life and your career and your work and you build businesses and you rent space and offices and hire therapists and spend money on marketing and branding and keep going to conferences and doing you're invited to do podcasts, you're a thought leader in the space. The more that you put your time, energy, attention, effort into something, the less likely you're going to be poking holes and criticizing its flaws and unwilling to address the systemic issues. This is just another symptom addresser, you know? So yeah. We were high on ketamine. Life's better now. It's a little bit more complex than that, right? It's we've got a nail stuck in the collective body and we keep tending to it, right? Bullet hole. Like uh, what's the phrase? Um, tending to a bullet wound. Putting band-aids on a bullet wound. We're still doing that. It's it's no different. So yeah, I find the ads of the people, everyone's happy, it's a sunny day, we're laughing, we're enjoying our lives. You know, this does healing is not compartmentalized and separate from the world that we live in, right? The world that we live in is rotten, sick, and toxic. The abstract world, not the natural world, not the world that is outside of projected egoic, narcissistic human thought, the thought that we can control, dominate, and shape. Really, the thought of men primarily who, since the dawn of civilization, uh, looked at the old, backward, savage way of the indigenous hunter gatherer tribes and said, whoa, that's scary, that's chaotic, that's unknown, which is the earthly mother, the way of feeling into things, the chaotic sort of tempestuous relationship with life and the earth. No, we've got to put rigid borders and boundaries and hard set rules and moral principles that are unshaking and unwavering and unbinding. And that is it's the fear of mostly men and people who have been captured into that primarily. I realize I'm a man. I'm not disparaging men. I'm just talking from a historical point of view that historically speaking, it's been fearful men, scared of the feminine, scared of the earth, scared of the jungle. The jungle is a harsh place. It's a dog eat dog world, and you're going to get eaten, and it's every man for themselves and survive, and it's cutthroat, and it's all fear based paranoia. um so we're unwilling for the most part as a mass civilization to really look at the core rot. And the core rot is that fearful structure. Like, what if there was no government? And what if there was no one regulating things? And what if there were no corporations to sell us products to make us happy? What would we do? How would we get happy and then get sad and then get drugs to make us feel happy again? Kind of lost myself a little bit there, but I'm a little rusty. I've been away for a bit, so bear with me here. I'll stop sharing this. But yeah, we live in interesting times, no doubt. I feel that I've really been an outcast and an outsider for my whole life, and I do feel a sense of hope that people are starting to get the message a little bit. But we can't help as human beings. We can't help be attracted to the shiny object that makes us feel important or gives us some kind of meaning, right? I made a comment on my friend Adam Healing from Healing's Instagram, which I tend to do from time to time because I'm a little bit lazy and I haven't had time to lazy to write something that's a little bit more, I don't know, researched and thought out, I guess is the right way to say it, because I just feel something and I want to say it, right? So um he made a post, and maybe I'll share my screen for this one too. He made a post and I liked it a lot. He always has really good memes, but this one was sincere. And this person says, uh, one of my best friends is from a sleepy, wealthy small town in southwest Germany. He said so many of my parents' neighbors are rich and bored with little to complain about, and they've radicalized themselves at dinner parties and online. In their aimlessness, they've bonded over hate. And then someone retweeted that. and said, I suspect this is a hugely underestimated factor in radicalization. If you look at, say, QAnon boards, it's not really folks looking for scapegoats for their dire material circumstances. It's middle class people. Excuse me. It's middle class people with boring lives who want to imagine they're in the parallax view. I had to look up what the parallax view was. I understood the context, but it's like some 1970s sort of like B movie paranoia conspiracy thriller. Yeah, yeah, it's right, right? So I wrote 100% on point. Humans need to live in story. It's essential. Good myths shape meaning. The modern world is a desolate wasteland of sterile, boring pantsuits, right? Like just like pantsuits, concrete buildings that are bland and boring, no inspiring aesthetic architectural beauty, boring, lame, just distilled and sterilized and drab and vanilla and manila file folder is how I used to call it, right? It's a desolate wasteland of this boringness, the arbitrary drudgery with no good stories to live by. We've gotten everything we thought we wanted or we were told that we should want and found out that it's hollow and boring. We're too comfortable and disconnected from the real meaning in life, so we seek extreme drama because we crave something more fulfilling. The stories we consume in books, art, and film just aren't enough. We want a higher stakes, real life LARPing, live action role playing. But I think where we're stuck is that we've been so conditioned by fear, our imagination tends to go towards paranoia. Fear hijacks the same creative force that once built entire cultures of mystical mythologies, redirecting it now into something paranoid, dark, and isolating, yet still grandiose in nature. Tribal societies and indigenous cultures cultures create collaborative, imaginative frameworks that ground their people with a sense of connection and purpose. Their stories weren't just explanations, they were invitations to live within something larger than ourselves. So, what are the stories that we have today? Capitalism, businessmen smoking cigars on yachts in the Mediterranean, posting pictures on Instagram Live, on Instagram to live off other people's likes like sustenance. It's empty, hollow, devoid of imagination. Because all these things are like fake plastic trees, replicas, replica trophies, symbols of the real thing. They're what we really want, but it's like spray painted with imitation gold. We could have we could easily have community and connection, imagination, fun, play, appreciation, and satisfaction. But oh no, that's just too simple. It can't be that simple. So we create elaborate, fear-based, egomaniacal fantasies and cast ourselves as the Christ who will save humanity. The problem isn't that we lack imagination, it's that we've let fear and loneliness and isolation dictate where it goes. The world is still a blank canvas. We are still the storytellers. The question is, do we use our imagination to trap ourselves in a cheesy, fear-driven political thriller, the parallax view, or to create something worth living in, a world that grows for the good of all? I personally would like to be smoking pipes, drinking ale, singing and dancing in the Shire, where my hobbit's at. Yeah, I mean that seems like a good life, right? And so essentially what I'm getting to here is that we need excitement because all the things that we were told that we should want or care about just aren't doing it. They're not doing it. And the things that do it for us are quite simple. It's really easy. It's not complex. We don't need thought leaders giving TED Talk. This isn't about that. This isn't about thought leaders giving TED Talks or, people writing books and people being like, yeah, interesting. This is about coming down to what really matters and taking action on it. Taking action on that, like feeling depressed, feeling lonely, feeling bored. Well, What do you do for work? Where do you spend the majority of your time? How do you spend the majority of your time? Do you have close friends? Do you have close family? Do you have friends that are like family? Do you feel good from the food that you put in your body? Are you able to feel like a sense of ease living life, right? I mean, I personally sometimes feel a little stuck in terms of navigating the general consensus dominant mainstream world and the world that I would like to live in, the Shire, right? Like it's not that complex. The complexity is how do we escape the game that has us ensnared in its grasp? There's a lot of trickery and there's a lot of manipulation, there's a lot of deception, there's a lot of people in the psychedelic, spiritual, conscious, God, wellness community that are so trapped, and they're either intentionally deceiving people or they're rationalizing to themselves that they're not while they do. You don't need a course to show you the way, right? What you need is someone maybe who's just inspiring and living that way that lets you hang out with them and you get used to a different way of living. Because that's what it's all about, right? I mean, when we look at, I believe one of my friends told this to me, and I just believe it because it sounds right. But I believe it is right. In Chinese medicine, oh, it was Charles Eisenstein that said it. He said in Chinese medicine, it said that the illness is close to being healed when it starts to manifest on the surface, like on the skin. Like if you have a rash, it's like something is happening inside, and now it is being cast or projected out, not projected, but like it's being shown now on the outside, which means that it's ready to begin the healing process. But the problem is still within, right? Like my son actually has a rash on his bum, and yeah, new dad. So it's pretty exciting. That's kind of why I haven't been releasing episodes, but we're looking at it and we're going, okay, well, we've tried a lot of creams, we've tried a lot of things that usually is like the first step, right? But again, it's kind of like that band-aid on a bullet wound thing. We're just solely trying to address the symptoms when in fact the issue might be within. It might be dietary. What are you putting into your body that is causing this as a result, right? Everything comes from somewhere. A plus B equals C. If you're eating things that are causing inflammation, that are causing yeast breakouts, things like that, well, it'd be a good idea to maybe experiment and try cutting those things out of your diet. And I know, it's hard, it's difficult. It's like, what? I can't have tacos. I can't have a sandwich. I don't get to have pizza. Come on. Well, luckily we live in a world where there's a lot of alternatives. So yeah, you might not be able to get the old thing that you have been accustomed to, but you might be able to get something that is similar. But the healing has to happen from within. It can't be topically applied. We can't just apply rules and regulations and borders and boundaries and say, okay, everyone, like here now let the healing begin. It has to be internal. It comes from within. And we don't know, like we have no idea what it could be, so we have to experiment. We have to start experimenting with different things. The next thing that I want to talk about, which is connected, is I wrote a little piece on Substack, the Mycadelic Inner Sanctum, and I titled it democracy rendered obsolete? What if that's a good thing? Breaking the illusion, why the system wins when we fight each other. So, you know, the basic like impetus for me to write that was that I'm just getting bored by looking out into the collective, into the people out in the world who are getting riled up about certain things that happen with the government, right? Like every time a political party makes a move we don't like, whether it's Republicans like doing something that the other side doesn't like, or the other side doing something that they don't like, it's always like, oh, can you believe these people? Oh, they're evil, they're bad. The truth is, like, a lot of this is set up to distract us, to keep us fighting each other while the system gets to execute its aims and agendas. Chaos. It's almost like I kind of just feel really not in despair, but I feel like I've been talking about this since 2013. So a long time publicly, or was it 2014? I forget exactly when, but since I was the co-host on Part of the Problem with Dave Smith, and then the launch of Micadelic in 2016. I mean, I've always been talking about this, and yeah, I'm not. I just want people to get the message, you know. And I had a conversation with Brian James, and he kind of called me out on that a little bit, and just was like, well, you know, not everyone is going to get the message, you know, that this is more of like a outsider type of thing, and we've got to sort of just be okay with that. And yes, and how do we navigate out of a corrupt and toxic system when most of the people that are like, there's so many things that if you're going to live in this world that you have to kind of like join in and be a part of. And the only way forward really is to start inviting people to live a different way. And then that gets all kind of messy though, because now you're talking, what are you talking about? You're talking about a commune, you're talking about what? Like buying some land, like, right? It's complicated because you're still in the world. I guess you don't have to be a part of it, and it's so much a part of it. So yeah, I think that the way forward is really to try and divest as much as possible from the mainstream general consensus system and start to create little pockets of communities that can help each other out, right? And this isn't like some rule. This is like how, you know, it's not like, okay, this is how we do things. This has to be something that people feel and agree upon. Um, and I mean, I think that's kind of the interesting thing, right? Is like a lot of people are like, well, if you're so smart, then what's the solution? It's like, I don't think that we can have like a blueprint, you know, but I really just, human beings we don't operate we're not machines. We don't operate according to a blueprint. We can adapt to that model, but you're going to get a lot of symptoms from the disease that is the rigidness of that model, which we see, which is what our world is now. So it has to be this sort of fluid, you know, constant sort of negotiation or conversation, this living, breathing conversation between people of like, what's cool, what's not cool, what do we want, what do we want to do, how do we want to do it, what's acceptable, with like a basic sort of foundation of a blueprint skeleton in place of like, yeah, we all generally sort of see things the same way. We all sort of get along in some way or another. We all sort of share similar values. I think this experiment of America and, you know, now really the world is like, it's You can say like, oh, look, people get along and you're less likely to get murdered, by another person and whatever this Matt Ridley bullshit is that, but I think that it's like, do we want to actually live or do we just want to sort of say that we're doing okay because everything, because people have houses, food, and cars? It's like, what good is all that stuff if you're not really living, right? So, what I'm trying to kind of articulate is like, there might be more risks associated with living in a different way, but you might live better and more fuller in that way, and I feel like it's sort of like I kind of feel like like someone at like a house party where it's like game night and people are all playing like one game and it's been going on for like hours and hours and I'm there and I'm like, hey, you guys want to play Catan instead of Monopoly, or like you guys want to play something different? And everyone's like, no, what are you, crazy? Like this is the only game in town. It's like that's what the system wants. That's what the bureaucrats want. That's what the oligarchs want. That's what they want. They want us to think that they're the only game in town, and without their game, we would all be, eating and killing and raping each other. That's like their main selling point. It's like without us, this world would be chaos. It's like, yeah, there's probably going to be some chaos, but it's not going to be as large and systemic and as institutionalized, and people won't be, living lives of quiet desperation, as Henry David Thoreau put, like soul crushing, muted existence. It's better to take a risk and, right? Like my wife and I just watched Dances with Wolves, and I was pointing out that Kevin Costner movie from like 1991. Great movie. I love it. And I was just pointing out, like, yeah, like the Native American tribes did have squabbles and did have wars with each other and they did fight. But it wasn't this like large, systemic, institutionalized machine marching across the land, raping and pillaging and incinerating like the earth. There's a difference between like the world devouring machine and the once in a while conflict that could lead to murder and death, right? It's like, yeah, they hunt and kill the buffalo, but they use the whole buffalo and they respect the animal and they don't take any more than they need. And then they get to this scene where the white men came and they just slaughtered like a whole field of buffalo and only took their hides and tongues, I think, hides and tongues. So it's different, It's like, yeah, there's hardship and suffering and challenges in both ways, but I would argue that there's more hardship and challenge and suffering in the way that we've been living because we're all being forced to fit into one way of doing things when that's just not who human beings are. And no wonder why we see madness and craziness. We're not meant to do that. And we somehow people get all tricked into thinking democracy is at stake. Oh, democracy is this sacrosanct, like, like it's the greatest thing that we've ever invented. When in fact, like, is it really? Is it really that? Can we do things a little bit better? Do we even really have a democracy? We don't. That's number one. And number two, even if we did, it's not functioning to the best of its ability, right? We have all this technological capability, all these cool gadgets and gizmos, yet we still have to like, we like cast a vote for someone to represent us and trust that this person's going to act on our best behalf. And then if half the country doesn't want one person to be their leader, they just are forced to conform to that way of being. Why? Why? When they want to defund Planned Parenthood, like, or Medicaid, everyone's just because they want the system to be this way and they want people to accept it as the only game in town because then everybody gets upset and mad at each other and then we fight each other And as this guy Sanderson, I forget his name, Benjamin or Brandon Sanderson. I haven't read his book. It's called A Crisis in Democracy. It's like $51 on Amazon, so I don't think I'll be reading it anytime soon. But I watched a video that someone recorded. I kind of gathered the gist of it. He uses the term rump professionals to talk about like, well, why don't things change in democracy? And it's like, well, most people grow up their entire lives, watching movies and TV shows. We're so conditioned by the media and by advertisements, whether we realize it or not, that a lot of people who aspire to be professionals, or as he calls them, rump professionals, wind up falling into being this rump professional, which means a professional that can't actually make the changes that they want and speak their mind, and they can't criticize the establishment because the establishment are their employers. So they redirect issues at fallen professionals, people who didn't get to be the professionals that they wanted to be and are jaded and disheartened and a little bit in despair. And so they cast like an out group as the villain. These backwards, bigoted MAGA people, they're the villains. They're these people that just have a different perspective and different values of living. And who are, I mean, this is the number one problem with our entire species is we can't leave people alone. We have to impose our morals, our ethics, our judgment of how one should live and what's good and what's bad. And we cast ourselves as the arbiters of judgment and the arbiters of truth, the arbiters of good and bad and evil and heroes. And, this is the way to do things. These people are backward savages. They don't know how to do things. They got to convert to Christianity or we kill them all. It's like these people, like, this is the number one problem. So why are we still living this way? You know, a lot of the people that, and I even see it in the community that I'm a part of, spiritual, psychedelic, conscious, people have hate in their heart. They really do. They really have hate in their heart for the other side. And yes, they'll direct it at the politicians and stuff, but they'll also just direct it at ordinary people who are ordinary people. But maybe those ordinary people have hate in their heart too for the other side, right? It's like one side is, oh, these backward hicks, and the other side's like, oh, these classists, like elitist liberals, and they're woke bullshit. It's like this game of like getting each other. We got you this time, and then it's like, oh, we're gonna get you back. And it's like, well, if we're constantly playing a game of one-upsmanship and getting each other and fighting each other, then that's all we're gonna do. And you know who that benefits? That benefits nobody that we are, like none of us, nobody that we know, nothing that affects our lives directly. It benefits the elite 1% class that wants to keep us fighting with each other. So I'm hoping that people start to really wake up and see that it's not that we're playing, like, it's not even that we're playing a rigged game, or that, like, it's the left or the right, or it's these policies or that policies. It's literally the board game itself, which is boring. It's boring. Let's play some new games. We have the ability to decentralize. We have the resources and the technology to meet and find other people. We have the ability. But then again, a lot of people are like, it's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of work. I don't want to do that. So they just rather would just, they're also comfortable in their stories. They're comfortable in their stories of being the victim, and like these people are the bad guys and we got to fight the power and fight the system. And like, I do think I just saw something where like Trump is outlawing college protests or something like that. And like, so now the left is going to be like, oh, well, he's like, now they're going to fight. Now the left is going to fight for free speech, right? Which has like been, which they've like cast somehow as being like a MAGA patriot right wing issue. And now it's like, no, we need our free speech. And he's a dictator. He's fascist. He's like outlawing, protests, when it's like a false issue. It's like, something to get people riled up about. It's something to get people riled up about so that the other side says like, well, yeah, I agree. It should be. It's like these criminals and they come and these protests and college is supposed to be a place of education. And if you can't do it, it's like bending reality to the will of whoever dictates the message that people want to hear, and then they cast themselves in a role. And we're all casted in these roles and we're just like screaming and shouting at each other because yeah, unfortunately, that quote from The Matrix is kind of true. Like most people are not ready to be unplugged, and many of them are so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it. Once you start suggesting a new game, it's like people's eyes glaze over. They're like, well, what does that mean for me and my identity and my life and what I care about and everything I lived in everything I learned in poli sci in college and my work, right? Like getting back to what I was talking about the rump professionals. Like these people are living in fear because they're stuck. They can't they've imagined themselves to be like, Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City having brunch and cocktails and like writing journalism pieces and whatever. They've imagined themselves in some Mad Men fantasy or something, and they're just like, they're like Edward Norton in Fight Club. They've got all the IKEA furniture, but they're sad, they're unfulfilled, they're dissatisfied, they're unhappy, and they can't do anything about it. They can't protest, they can't make any real change, they can't criticize I mean they can, but they have to be aware that they have a choice first. And then when they get to that choice, they have to be courageous and not cowardly. But it takes the awareness of the choice. Most people aren't aware that they have a choice. Or you could like, working with people one on one as a coach. People have often said like, I have to or I can't to talk about things in their lives. And it's like, no, you always have a choice. You're just scared to make the choice. You're scared to because it's been so ingrained that you have to do things one way. We always have a choice. And it's like, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to choose? Right? And most people are not willing to make sacrifices to criticize the establishment or the systemic root issues in film, movies, TV, magazines, in corporations. They're not willing to criticize the structure because they are employed by the structure. So if they criticize the structure, they know that they're disposable and they'll just be out, and some eager, desperate new person will come in and be ready to play ball. It's like kind of like George Carlin said, it's like there's the poor, there's the homeless, there's the middle class, there's the rich, and the rich keep getting richer, and the middle class keep fighting to be like the rich, but they never will be, and the poor and the homeless are there to scare the shit out of the middle class. So there really isn't like a middle class anymore. It's like we're all kind of like struggling in one way or another, and if you're not, you're struggling in one way or another. If you're not struggling financially, you're struggling mentally or spiritually or soulfully, some way, physically. It's like there's no way out of this unscathed. Everything has a cost. Everything, every choice that we make. So yeah, I mean, these are kind of my thoughts for now. Just guess like, just to sum up this sort of disjointed ramble, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I really want to start gathering with people who are really interested in divesting from the system to navigate to uncharted territories of how to address the systemic root issues in a way where we can create appealing alternatives by collaborating and working with each other to help each other, right? Like back to the defunding of Medicaid that the Republicans voted on or whatever. I don't even know. I haven't kept up with the story. I just saw a headline like a week ago or something. But it's literally the same thing. It's like any time there, it's there's abortion is illegal now, and it's like, why are we choosing to play their game and agree to their terms, right? Like if the system wanted to if the system really cared about people and wanted to make things work for 330 million plus diverse people in the United States, then it would say something like, "Hey, you know, everybody is mandated to contribute to taxes, but we're going to be transparent about where we spend those taxes, and you're going to get to choose where you want that money to go. So every year or every quarter or whatever, we send something out, but this would require active citizen engagement, right? So let's not forget that. Oh, it's like, okay, you're in a tax bracket and your taxes are 15%. I don't agree with taxation and the federal government, but let's just, for sake of argument, just go down this example, right? It's like we're all at some level. You're just like, okay, look, I know I'm being held hostage by a mafia criminal entity that calls itself the government and tricks people into the illusion of authority that they claim power and rights over us that we can't just have ourselves when in fact we can. But okay, fine, if that's the case, because they have all the guns and they'll throw me in a cage if I disagree. Let's just say, okay, fine, I accept your terms. You mandate me to pay 15% tax on my income and stuff, right? Okay, I'm going to now be giving tax to the federal government. Well, give me a list of options as to where that money, like that would be, why can't we do that? Right? So then everybody that wants to fund Planned Parenthood funds it. Everybody that doesn't. Everybody that wants to fund Medicaid funds it. Everybody that doesn't want to fund Medicaid doesn't, right? But it's that sounds great, right? But no, 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 no. It's just wrong. These people are bad. They don't have a heart. They don't have a soul. They don't have compassion. We have to force them to care about things that they don't care about because it's the right thing to do. And boom, there you go. That's where we're at. People being manipulated like a bunch of puppets on hot button emotional issues, getting all riled up and choosing to hate other people because they're not like them or they don't care about what they care about, right? We want to talk about racism, we want to talk about bigotry, we want to talk about things like that, but we never want to talk about ideological, like perspective hate, hating other people's perspective, hating that they don't care about what you care about. Well, maybe their life is different. Maybe they've never been affected by something that you've been affected by. So it's not important to them. I think we need to get to a point where we realize like, hey, we're all different. Everyone in this world is different, right? Same, but different. We all have different values. We all care about different things. Let's choose what's important to us and let's agree to disagree, accept our differences, and know that it's a futile effort and it's an effort that fuels the fire of the machine of the system that wants to keep us fighting each other to try and force other people to see things the way that we see them. Let's just stop trying to force people to care about things that they don't care about equally to us. But if everybody funds what they care about, there you go. Right? But that makes too much sense. Then you don't have this racket, right? You don't have this racket. You don't have this system that thrives off of us. It is literally the lifeblood. I think it was someone said, I forget the name. Someone said war is the health of the state, and they're correct. War in the sense of the military is the health of the state, but war amongst the citizens is the health of the state. Chaos is a ladder. There's an opportunity to climb, right? As Littlefinger said in Game of Thrones, like divide and conquer. Things are not so complicated. Yet I feel that because we are living in a meaningless, purposeless, bland, drab, not beautiful, not aesthetically pleasing, arbitrary, mundane, lonely, isolated existence, that we have to dream up elaborate scenarios. And one side is like, well, it's actually not that simple. You have to break it down. You have to look at the science. You have to kind of human behavior is here's the scientific explanation and and it like complicates everything. And then people are used to giving their power away to authority figures, experts, men in white lab coats, whatnot. Oh yeah, yeah, he must be right. He knows more than me. So, right. And then the other side is like, yeah, it's pretty damn simple. Just shut the fuck up. It's like, shut the fuck up. Stop taking my money. Right. It's like we're constantly pitted in this war of like, and it gives us like an identity and a purpose and like meaning to be like, where do you stand? What kind of person are you? Oh, I'm not one of those blue-haired social justice warrior freaks, like, oh, I'm not one of those MAGA hat wearing, tech bro, Elon, whatever the hell. Okay, so be you, right? But I think that we do have the resources and the ability to fund what we love and fund what we care about. We just need people to gather people together to be inspired to do that because quite frankly, a domesticated dog isn't necessarily going to find itself at home in the woods with wolves. So we need to sort of train that dog to be able to adapt to the new wild environment that he's been so, so far removed from. Yeah. But on the other hand, I do feel hopeful. I do feel like people are slowly sort of, waking up and starting to get it. And yeah, if you feel like I feel, then let's try and create a little bit more action oriented gathering in a way, right? I oftentimes feel that people aren't really spurred on. I mean, myself included, until there's a crisis. But we've been in a long crisis. The crisis is here. This is nothing new. There's nothing that's happening politically that's new. It's been going on for a very long time. Structurally, societally, culturally, it's a very, very, very sophisticated mechanism that we're in right now. So it takes a lot of layers of waking up and understanding and coming to new insights and realizations. And also it could happen quick too. Let's not forget that, right? No one predicted when the Berlin Wall was going to fall, and then boom, it fell. And people like Thaddeus Russell say it really fell because young people saw the West and they saw the freedom of Levi's, blue jeans, MTV, rock and roll, and we're like, hey, fuck this whole thing. Let's tear this down. Like we want to live. We want cool shit. Well, I think that's about it for me. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to go check out the Substack article, yeah, go check it out. Mycadelic Inner Sanctum Substack. Maybe I'll put a link in. I don't know. I'm very lazy and I might not. But Mycadelic Inner Sanctum Substack. I wrote a little article about this kind of stuff that we're talking about here, and I might write some more things, but I really got to start getting behind the mic more to talk with other people, and start getting greasing the wheels back into this you know chariot or whatever. All right. Thanks. I appreciate you guys. Much love. Till next time. Peace.